Someone here today, someone watching this today, is going to change everything, going to do something that matters. They're not going to do it because their boss told them to. They're not going to do it because it's their job. They're going to do it because they decided to. They're going to do it because it's important. I want to start by telling you about a hero of mine named Nathan Winograd. Nathan was the #2 guy at the SPCA in San Francisco when he found out that every year 4 million dogs and cats in this country, in the United States, are swept off the streets and killed, usually within one day. 10,000 dogs and cats a day. When Nathan heard this, he wanted to fix it, but he had no budget, he had no authority, he had no power, he wasn't in charge, and he ignored all of that. Nathan Winograd reached out to the community. He raised the money he needed, and within 90 days, San Francisco was the first no-kill city in the United States. Well, you say, that's easy, it's San Francisco. And he left there and went to Tompkins County, New York, a rural county near Ithaca, and did it again. And then he went to Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, and he did it again. And then he went to Reno, Nevada, and he did it again. One guy who decided he wanted to do work that mattered. This is the opposite of the legend of Betty Crocker, the fictional goddess of cake mix in the United States. That Betty Crocker's entire model was go on the radio in 1933. General Mills had to hire hundreds of women to sign her name to all the letters that came in. Make average products for average people and sell them over and over and over again. More and more shelf space, more and more money, more and more profit. And a lot of us grew up believing in Betty Crocker, believing in this model, that if we just had the power and authority to put something into the world, we could get people to buy it. This is my friend Lucy Mahalo. She lives in Kitale, Kenya, and she's a millionaire. She has 1.8 acres of land. And somewhere in her house, buried probably under the bed, are 1 million Kenyan shillings that she's earned with the 5 cows she owns, the 25 chickens, the taxi she bought, and the little seedling farm she has in addition to all the corn. Her neighbors are probably subsistence farmers, but Lucy's keeping score of something different. She decided she wanted to do something for her 11 kids, and she started keeping track of things and reaching forward and doing it as opposed to talking about it. She found the resources she needed and doubled down and grew it. I have nothing against Betty Crocker, understand. I think if I met her, she and I would have a nice lunch together. But the legend of Betty Crocker is fading right here and right now, right? We can look at the warning signs, but the fact is there's something that isn't working the way that it used to. What we grew up with is this idea that if you've got a product, put some babies in an ad and maybe you can sell it. Babies work. If babies don't work, try doctors. But this notion that we can promote an idea from a position of power is what we grew up with. Sometimes it gets us in trouble because of unfortunate juxtapositions. But in general, our society is built on this notion of more. That what we do is we build a system, we put someone in charge of the system, we obey the system, and we try to scale it. All of us grew up with it. Right? I call it the TV industrial complex. I'll give you the example from Revlon. Charles Revson started Revlon in the 1940s. He was the first guy to run TV ads for cosmetics. Those TV ads got him distribution in drugstores all around the country. That distribution, of course, helped him sell more products. And then Charles Revson did something brilliant. He bought more TV ads. And around and around and around it goes. Every brand you've heard of, every company you've heard of has followed this model. Cisco starts succeeding, so they hire more salespeople. The salespeople go on sales calls. They make more money. What do they use the money for? To get more salespeople. And around it goes. That leads to that. Average products for average people, except for maybe Pop-Tarts. But the rest of them, all really carefully chosen to appeal to the masses. You know why? Because if you want to make something for everyone, if you're going to do mass marketing, you better have something everyone wants to buy. And so we have average politicians for average people, and we have average organizations for average people, and average clothes for average people, because mass is built into our culture. And yet right here, right now, on our watch is a revolution. Right? I don't know if you know what this is. Maybe you've seen one before. This is a record album. And it was perfect. And the thing about revolutions is they do things that are perfect and impossible. It was perfect, because if I liked it and I listened to it a lot, I wore it out, I had to buy a new one. If I liked it and I loaned it to you, I didn't have it anymore, I had to buy a new one. If I went to buy a new one, I went to a store that the record industry didn't pay for that would sell me lots of them. And I would hear it on the radio, public spectrum, dedicated to helping the music industry sell more stuff. And then one day, industry's broken. It's gone. Suddenly, the rules change. The newspaper industry, broken, on the way out. This is a book warehouse, right? One by one, we see various pillars of industry, of mass, starting to change and go away. And at the same time, variety explodes. Typical supermarket has 30,000 different items. Go to any town you want, open the yellow pages to church, and look how many listings there are. TV, there used to be 3 channels, 4 when I grew up in Buffalo, channel 29 for Ultraman, but generally not very many choices. Now how many choices are there? If you count Netflix with all its channels, a couple 100,000, a million, but if I count the web, there's 1 billion channels, 1 billion ways to reach 6 billion individual people. So this notion, the Betty Crocker notion of find some guy, assault him with an idea, proselytize to him, spread the idea to everyone. Hopefully one day he'll turn around and buy something from you so you can do it again. It doesn't work. We branded ourselves to death, guys. Now, if you're used to that way of thinking, we can have a moment here where we really worry about it. We can even mourn it, but I think it's important to understand that revolutions destroy the perfect and they enable the impossible. Betty Crocker's R&D facility not far from here is now Brian McElrath's custom bespoke chocolate shop. Not for everyone. For a few people who would miss him if he wasn't there. That what we're seeing happening is the death of the industrial age. It's going to hurt our economy forever. The industrial age is over. But it's being replaced by a new age of weird, a new age of edges, a new age of different people needing and wanting different things, an age of what I call tribes. A tribe is a group of people who share a culture and a goal, right? An idea, who want to be together. We're used to having just 3 real tribes in our lives, right? A spiritual tribe, you're part of one, a work tribe, and a community tribe, right? But what has shifted here now is an explosion of tribes. You know the Red Hat ladies, right? You can go to almost any city in the world and find them. They share a common bond. Or the Red Hat guys, the triathletes, they don't even like the swimming part, right? Or my favorite, these Red Hat guys. The thing is that as these tribes spring up, as people meet up, connect up, group up, things are changing because they still want what everyone wants, which is to be in sync. I want to show you what I mean. I'm going to do a little test here. I've been around the world testing this. I'm going to test you. If you could follow the instructions on the next slide, and you can do this from the comfort of wherever you're watching this as well. I'm going to time you. Go. Okay, stop. That was terrible. 14 seconds. One group took 27 seconds. I was sweating bullets the whole time. Here's the thing. Every group I've ever done this with has pulled it off. And every group claps at a different rhythm. You guys were some of the most excited clappers ever. How did you know at which rhythm to clap? I didn't show you. No one stood up and said, this is the official clapping rhythm. We did it because we're organized to do it. Deep in our DNA, we want to be in sync. We want to do what other people are doing. But not what everyone in the world is doing, what our people are doing. And this need to be in sync is where our desire to be part of a tribe comes from. And these tribes, they need leaders. They need someone who will help them communicate with each other, who will connect them to each other, who will commit to the mission that the tribe is on, who will build a culture and then challenge it, right? And who will be clear in where they're going and why they are going there. And this is the opportunity of your lifetime, if you want to do work that matters, because you don't have to do it by yourself. That what the world is saying, whether you make iPhones or spiritual advancement, is please show up, get us in sync, and help us get there. Now, some tribes, like the Nike tribe of super skinny people who run too many miles a day, are invented, right? That there were none of these skinny guys before Nike showed up and invented it. On the other hand, the Beatles did not invent teenagers. They just showed up and led them. Bob Marley did not invent the Rastafarians. He showed up and led them. And so there's this opportunity on the table in front of us. And what we have to think about is it your opportunity? So let me give you a little social economics history. Here's two famous economists. That's Groucho's younger brother, Carl, and Adam Smith. And the thing is, both of them lived about the same time, and they both saw the same device, which is this pin-making machine. Now, the thing about a pin-making machine is this. Before the pin-making machine, a skilled pin-making craftsperson could make 4 or 5 pins a day. Draw the steel, sharpen the thing, etc. After the pin-making machine, 4 guys off the street with 5 minutes of training could make 10,000 pins a day. So Karl Marx looked at this and he said, we've got big trouble, workers of the world unite. Because he realized that skilled craftspeople were going to be in trouble. And Adam Smith looked at this thing and said, quick, go buy a pin-making machine. Because he understood that the person who owns the means of production is the person who gets to make the decisions, the person who's in charge. The person who owns the factory runs the town. And something unbelievable has happened in the last 5 years. The means of production looks like that. The laptop, the thing that connects you to the world, the thing that lets you do business with people anywhere in the world, the thing that gives you the same tools as every ad agency everywhere has, the thing that lets you connect to individuals, the thing that lets you find resources, the thing that lets you raise money or give money. That's the means of production, and guess who owns it? The worker. Anybody who's got a white-collar job has their hands on the world. And like Nathan Winograd, you can choose to do something with it if you want to. The history of mankind is pretty interesting. For 50,000 years, what we did for a living is we hunted. If you got hungry, you had to go out and catch something. And then about 10,000 years ago, they invented farming, right? Plant seeds, water them, fertilize them, watch them grow, then you harvest them. Farming worked for a really good long time. But thanks to the Industrial Revolution, it turned into a job, right? That if you want to be a coal miner, you don't start your own coal mine. You go to work for the guy who owns the coal mine. And what happened in just the last 100 years is very simple. The farmers stopped farming and started going out and getting jobs. And now we're looking at this crisis, this economic crisis in front of us, and the question we've got to ask is this the end of the job? And I want to argue there's something after the job. I'm calling it being an artist. Right? Art, I'm picking the word very carefully. Sure, Picasso was an artist, and Jackson Pollock, and Joseph Beuys with his felt, and Bill Shakespeare with the plays. But, you know, when they put a urinal in the Dadaist art exhibits, that was art. The second guy who put in a urinal was a plumber, right? that Marcel Duchamp did something dangerous. He did something personal. He did something human. He connected with people by making a comment. Right? The second guy was just doing his job. The Beatles, when they made Sgt. Pepper, clearly made a work of art. How do you know? Because after Sgt. Pepper, if you made any record that sounded anything like it, people would say, that sounds a lot like Sgt. Pepper. It's a line in the sand. It's a change. If you go to New York, plan 2 months ahead and go to the Per Se restaurant, it'll cost you $300 to eat dinner there. I hope you're not going for the calories, because you can get the calories cheaper and faster at McDonald's downstairs. But Per Se is delivering you a human expression on a plate they designed that you've never had before that might change you, or that receptionist, the one you haven't fired to replace with a voicemail service, she's an artist because she's bringing humanity to a conversation in a way that your voicemail system never could. There's a village in China called Dafan where they paint 1/3 of all the oil paintings in the world. Every morning, the villagers get up and paint the same painting, paint by number, as fast as they can, over and over again. That is not art. That is painting, right? You can buy the Mona Lisa in Dafan for $29. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the risky human act of doing something you haven't done before for someone else, with someone else. And I want to show you just how deeply the industrial age has affected us. What I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, is raise your hand just as high as you can. Okay, now raise it just a little bit higher. What's that about? I'll tell you what it's about. When the boss says go do something, you do it the minimum. Because if you do it more than the minimum, then tomorrow she's going to ask you to do it even more than that. And you better hold something in reserve because there's a natural tension between the boss and the worker. But if you own the means of production, why are you holding back exactly? Henry Ford was the most important, influential person in the 20th century without any fear of error, I can say that. He changed everything. Most of all, he made much of the world rich because he figured out that mass production could lead to productivity. He went to the machinists in Detroit and he said, you're a 50-cent a day man. Come work for me, I'll pay you $5 a day. In one day, he changed the entire economy. But the deal was in order to get the $5, you had to be productive, which meant you had to work on the assembly line, which means you had to do what you were told. And the faster the assembly line went, the more money that was made, right? So the factory mindset, and you probably work in a factory, is really simple. Keep the line moving. Managers are different than leaders. Managers do what they did yesterday and try to get their people to do it a little faster and a little cheaper. Leaders are in a totally different business. That the factory was all about interchangeable parts, mass production, any color you want as long as it's black. You know why? Because black paint dries 4 hours faster, so you can keep it going faster, right? And a system where you had to comply. That system of following the rules has infected our spiritual institutions just as much. They weren't like this 1,000 years ago. They're like the way they are now because they're a reflection of what we do all day. But you know what mass production leads to? Not just interchangeable parts, but interchangeable people. Interchangeable people, you don't come to work, I'm not going to shut down the assembly line, I'll put someone else in your slot. Interchangeable people. So we create a culture where we teach people to fit in, because that's what makes the factory work, right? We send people to school and teach them to fit in. You know why? So we can ignore them. And we've built this entire structure about complying and getting an A and being just right and having the resume so that the industrialists in every one of the systems of our lives can ignore us. At this point, you're realizing, I hope a little bit, that you have a chance here in this post-industrial age to do it maybe a little differently, to figure out which path you want to go on, to figure out what difference you want to make. And at this point, thanks to your upbringing, you say, okay, what's the map? If I was going to do that, how would I do it? What are the steps, right? Tell me how to get from there to there. I'm willing to give it a try. I'm so desperate for a map, I'll even take a fictional one. You know, it's gotten to the point where we even read books on how to waste time at work. And the thing is, there is no map. There is no map for being an artist, right? There's a map for being a plumber, for installing the second urinal. But the first one, the human act, the connecting act, if I could tell you how to do it, it wouldn't be art anymore. Competence used to be important. It used to get you a job, a living, maybe even a middle-class living. Competence is no longer scarce. If you go to McDonald's, there's a McDonald's in Southern California, you pull up to the drive-thru, and you talk through the little microphone to the guy behind the glass. Except you're not talking to the guy behind the glass. What you're saying is going over TCP/IP to South Dakota, where someone who's getting paid 10 cents less an hour is answering your call, typing in what you say, and sending it back over the internet to the guy who's flipping the burgers. Because the 10 cents is worth it. Because competence is no longer sufficient to get a job. A couple collections of photos I want to show you. This is my collection of cafeteria ladies. I think I have the largest collection of cafeteria lady photos in the world. That's my favorite outfit one. And this is the saddest one, because these are prison cafeteria ladies. Customers don't like them, the boss doesn't like them, the working conditions are horrible, pay is low, turnover is high. The question is that what your job's going to be like soon? Because the thing with a race to the bottom is you might win. And that's no fun, right? And that if you have a job where the boss is writing down what you do all day, she's going to find someone cheaper than you as soon as she possibly can. That the only option is not to hope that there's going to be a race to the bottom, but to figure out how to race to the top. You may have seen that inspiring video of the free hugs movement on YouTube. If you haven't, go look it up. Well, the guys in the expensive hugs business hate this whole thing because they worked really hard to be able to offer expensive hugs, and here are these people undercutting them. It's absurd. It's outrageous. But if all you can offer in your institution is that you're the local church, that they would have to drive past you to get somewhere else, I'm sorry, local is like cheap. It's not going to get you where you want to go. So what are you going to do about it? Well, here's one idea. Quit bowling. Bowling, yeah, it's really him. Bowling is not a very popular spectator sport. And the reason it's not that popular is because it's boring, and it's boring because you're trying for perfect. It's asymptotic. Nothing really exciting happens along the way. What people talk about, what spreads the word, is something they don't expect. Like, what are the bottled water guys going to do? Make it wetter? You know, you see 20 different kinds of bottled water. What are you going to do? Buy the cheap one. Well, they could try this. But other than that, so if you're playing by the rules, if you're doing everything the way you're supposed to, if you're bowling, well then, please don't expect people are going to cross town to show up. Please don't expect that people are going to talk about you. Please don't expect that they're going to spread the word. Everyone's seen brown cows. They've seen as many brown cows as they can handle. Cows are boring. The only cow we're going to talk about is a purple cow. And you're not going to get there from a dummy's manual. You're not going to get there by taking somebody else's notes and doing what they said. And you're not going to get there because your boss told you what to do. Because if she knew, she would have done it already. Right? I had this really pathetic, fascinating conversation with 5 kids, 10, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 11-year-old, 10-year-old, something like that. All straight-A students. And I took out my little Taiwanese drinking bird. You all have one, right? It's this perpetual motion machine. You can get it for $3. It goes back and forth and back and forth. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, she does. Okay. So I put it down on the table. I say, guys, how does it work? They look at it for about 3 seconds, pull out a pencil and say, I don't know, Seth, tell us. I said, Rebecca, we don't need people to memorize facts anymore. We have Wikipedia for that. If I want to know how something works and the answer is known, I'll just look it up. You don't go to school to learn when the War of 1812 was anymore, because it's easy to find out. That what we need you to do is solve interesting problems. Ask me some questions about the bird. Let's see if you can. It took them a half an hour to figure out how the drinking bird worked. It really made me sad, because the entire mindset that we're drilled into us from the time we're 5 is what you want to do is what you're asked to do. And that's not going to get you anywhere anymore. We teach you to wait to get picked. Give me a break. Pick yourself. If you want to write, write. If you want to sing, sing. Right? The internet is giving you a microphone. The world is giving you a microphone. You don't need permission anymore. It's not like Henry Ford building a factory that cost $100 million. If you want to write, put it up on your blog. Don't wait for someone to publish you. If you're desperate to do certain kinds of counseling to 20, 30, 40 people in a group, well then schedule it and go do it. And if they don't show up, figure out what you did wrong. But you say, wait, I might fail. Here's the thing about failing. Every project has two sides, right? Heads and tails, success and failure. If you've decided that what you're doing is so urgent that failure is not an option, you have just announced to everyone that neither is success. Because it is impossible to do art and always succeed. You will do art and you will be made fun of. You will do art and you will fail miserably. You will do art and you will offend people. You will do art and it will not work. But that's what makes it art. And deep down, that makes us really uncomfortable, which is why they invented the BlackBerry. I mean, look at all these guys. What are they doing? You know, you get a BlackBerry in the first minute, you go, oh yeah, good, everything's okay, and you put it away. And then 15 minutes later, you go, I wonder if everything's still okay. Yep, everything's still okay. And at that point, you are hooked, right? You're like a pigeon in a Fuller experiment, like this at the soccer game, over and over and over again. Well, because no one's ever done important creative work with a BlackBerry, what they're doing is just checking to make sure everything's okay. Because of the heckler, because of the voice in our head that says, how dare you? How presumptuous of you? What right do you have? Who said you could do that? On what authority are you possibly extending yourself as someone who might know what to do? Right? We don't do it because we might get eaten by an alligator. We don't do it because we might fall off a cliff. A shark might fall on our house. Right? I mean, the thing is that a werewolf might eat you. But in the back of your brain, you've got something psychologists call the lizard brain. Steve Pressfield gives it a name, the resistance. That's that little voice in the back of your head that made you change your outfit 3 times before you went on a blind date. That's the little voice in the back of your head that says, don't raise your hand at the end because someone might make fun of you. Now, the lizard brain was really useful when there were saber-toothed tigers. It's really useful if you go to a baseball game and a bat's flying towards you in the stands, because in that moment, it can take over and save you. But most of the time, the lizard brain pushes you to act like a sheep. Most of the time, the lizard brain says, fit in, fit in. Now, people hear me talking about this, and they say, yeah, but Seth, the economy's really bad. I don't want to lose my job. It could be cataclysmic. Well, my friend Melissa says, just because the tide is out doesn't mean there's less water in the ocean. What's going on is it's moving around. What's going on is that every revolution destroys what came before it creates what's new. Trungpa Rinpoche, a Buddhist monk, was walking through Tibet with 2 other monks, much younger than him. And they walked past the cemetery. There was a junkyard dog there, pulling and straining at the leash. And when they got about 30 feet away, the leash broke, and the dog launched at them. And the 2 monks ran away as fast as they could. And Rinpoche knew he could not run them. So he looked straight at the dog and ran straight for it. And the dog was so stunned by this, it put its tail between its legs and ran away. And that's the metaphor. If you want to stand out, that's the metaphor. Right? That at some point you're going to do something worth talking about. And that art you're going to do is going to be revolving around not selling something, not doing favors, not giving presents, but giving gifts. Gifts. Going to someone and saying, I am doing this for you, I am doing this with you, hoping that you will spread it. Right? Matthew Hoffman put an idea into the world, a very simple idea, and suddenly it started spreading. It started changing people. That what Hugh MacLeod taught us is that the market for something to believe in is infinite. And if you can give people something to believe in, just give it to them. Magical things start to change. There's a coffee shop in London called Proof Rock. And the guy who runs it loves coffee. And he gave out one of those frequent buyer cards. And it's got, if you buy 8 cups of coffee, you get a free one. Except they're his 8 biggest competitors. Now, do you think he called up the 8 guys and said, I'll put you on there if you put me on yours? No, he just did it. Because it was more important to him that you discover great coffee than it was that he sell you 1 extra cup. I went to see Levon Helm in concert a couple years ago, about 600 people in Tarrytown. I was really lucky. I was in the front row. And I look up, and playing the piano is Donald Fagen from the American rock group Steely Dan. And I'm thinking to myself, how much did Levon Helm have to pay Donald Fagen to come, give up a Saturday night, and play in this little place? And then I say, idiot, of course not. He didn't pay him anything. Because Donald Fagen understands he's only going to get 1 Saturday night, October 3rd, to give his music. And he can spend it at home doing nothing, or he can come here and give his art to the people in the room. It's like the carrots left over at the end of the day at the farmer's market. Either you give them away or they're going to rot. And too many people are walking around holding on to something while it rots. I flew to Boston from White Plains. Every time I fly, I think I should have driven. And I got there in like 29 minutes. It was great, 29 minutes. But the flight home circled for an hour and a half with the fog until we ran out of gas. Why they wait till they run out of gas, I don't know. We made this sort of emergency landing in Albany. Albany is a pit. And if there's anyone from Albany here, I'll see you after the talk. And so they pull up right near the gate. They say, you can't get off. Well, and they also say, we'll be here for 2 hours. So I open my laptop. I go online. Avis has 1 car left. So I grab it. I say to the flight attendant very nicely, I really need to get off this plane. If you say it just like that, they'll always let you off. And so, I'm wearing a suit and tie, and before I get off, I turn to the audience. I always call it the audience. The people on the plane, and there's like 18 of them. I say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a psychopath. I'm wearing a tie. My car is in White Plains, so is yours. It's an hour-and-a-half drive. I already rented a car from Avis. I already paid for it. It's got room for 3 more people. Who'd like to come? It's on me. No one in the plane volunteered. As far as I know, they're still in Albany. And the question is, why? And the answer is, because if they get off the plane, it's their fault, but if they stay on the plane, it's United's fault. And that is built into the way we were raised. That we are constantly looking for a reason not to do our art, not to put ourselves on the line. David Rakoff wrote a great little story about being in the movies. Theater is empty. He's right near the front. This woman, well-dressed woman with a couple shopping bags, walks up right up to the row he's in, points and says, excuse me, is this seat taken? What? And then right there, he had an existential crisis. Is this seat taken? How many people want your seat? How many people would kill for your platform, for your chance to make art, for your chance to influence people? It's so easy to look at what's going on around you and come up with every excuse and every constraint and every reason why it's broken. Or you can take a look at it and say, you know what? This is the opportunity of a lifetime. The world is being turned upside down, commercially, organizationally, politically. And the question is, what are you going to do about it? And what I am begging you will do about it is some of these things. Make art, give gifts, connect, lead, ship things, make a difference, right? If it's important enough to talk about, if it's worth doing, then what exactly are you waiting for? There's a box. Inside the box, it's too dark to get anything done. Outside the box, there's nothing to lean against, no leverage, no way to do anything. But on the edges of the box, you've got a chance to dance and to connect and to lead. When you go home at the end of the day, if someone you love says to you, how was your day? And your answer is fine, then you are not leading. Then you are saying, I survived another day at the factory. On the other hand, if your day is filled with passion and pathos and excitement, then maybe, just maybe, you're putting yourself on the line. So if you want an invitation, a 6-word invitation, I'll give it to you. What the world is saying, what they are begging for, what they are demanding, what I know you can do is to lead them. I know you'll do that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.